by definition, putting your glutes as close to your heels as possible is going to be a squat. And notice that that definition does not have a barbell in it at all. Does not. So when we think about a squat, we want to think about maximum knee, right? Maximum dorsiflexion or ankle flexion. And then I want to think about minimal hip. So you'll notice that my chest didn't change directions very drastically except for me hinging the hip in that slight position, right? So we're thinking maximum knee, minimal hip when you guys are thinking squat. So now we have like what a squat is, right? We're going over, again, maximum knee, minimal hip, and then obviously some sort of ankle flexion depending on your squat. We need to understand why we're squatting. So what would be some reasons to squat?
Pick heavy stuff up more than anything else.
What's up?
It's the motion you do more than anything else in your life.
So most of the time it's going to be one of the heaviest exercises you can do. So it's the motion we're going to do daily life is squatting and sitting. And it's also in the gym, one of the heaviest exercises we can do. Some other reasons to squat.
Picking things up off the ground.
Sure, getting stronger, right? Getting stronger. Squat is a big strength developer. Any other reasons? Right, exactly. So maybe aesthetic development, right? Maybe we want big quads or we want a big butt, right? So glutes, quads, right? Those are big drivers. So aesthetics could be it. General health could be it. I just need to be a little teeny tiny bit healthier. Everyday movement, it's a very basic human fundamental movement. Or it could be to just be stronger. And then on the flip side of that, it could be one step further than that. It could be competition, right? So we went over the squat definition, and other than competition, it doesn't really require a barbell. But if you are going to squat per competition, whether that is in an Olympic setting and you're getting into a clean and jerk, which involves that front squat position, or in a powerlifting setting, which involves that back squat position, you have to use a barbell because those are sports dedicated to that strength. But other than that, don't necessarily need a barbell. And that's not me giving you an excuse to not squat. I promise. We're going to go over tons of variations that do have barbells and tons that do not have barbells. Getting into a little bit more fundamental, a little bit more theory. Can anybody give me some cues? Now we're going to talk about the barbell back squat. Some cues that you would hear, either your coach or that you're thinking when you go to set up to the bar. Some cues for the squat.
Tight core.
Tight core, right?
Foot position.
Sure, we'll call that stance for today.
Yeah. Ass first.
Yeah, we're going to say lead with the hips.
Stack your spine.
Nice. Who said that? Oh. Stack your spine. That's a good one. Any other ones? Ray, you got some old school ones for me? We used to use chest up and arch your back, right? That was the one that we were all told. Like, drive your chest as high as you can and arch that back. And I'll go over why that became a cue when we get to it. And I'll go over why we don't really use that cue as much anymore in the strength world. Any other ones, guys?
Feet.
Feet, right? So what about feet?
Rip and grip.
Grab the floor. I like it. Rip and grip. That's old school too, huh? So we're going to go with feet. Sure. So again, guys, we're going with a barbell back squat. So what else were we thinking about?
Knees over the toes.
Knees over toes. And so we're going to go with knees and toes as one cue, right? We're just going to go knees with my toes, right? That's where I want my knees with my toes. And again, I'm going to explain that a little bit better. Guys, don't get wrapped up over how I cue things. Cues are not necessarily movements, right? Sometimes you can over cue a movement. It's not very often, but sometimes we can. So like sometimes you'll tell someone, wait on your heels, right? That's a cue that we've all heard before when we're squatting. But when I'm squatting, do I really want my weight on my heels? No, right? I use that cue if I have an athlete that has a tendency of doing this, right? And their feet shift forward. If you guys can't see in my shoe, as I go to squat, I'm kind of lightening the load on my heels. So then you would hear your coach scream, weight on your heels, right? But vice versa, I would also not want someone to squat with their toes on the floor, like off the floor like this and trying to push in that position. So it's a cue, not necessarily a movement, right? Let's go one step further than that. So we have valgus and varus, right? You guys don't need to get super technical with the names, but we have knees in and knees out. And you're constantly going to hear everyone say knees out, knees out, knees out. But I also don't want to squat like this. Ooh. We don't want to squat my knee all the way out there, right? And just like I don't want to squat in here, it's just more common that we have a knee drive in than you see someone who has the ability to push their knees out further than their foot base position. And that's again why we're going to go over this knees with my toes, right? So we got stack the spine, core. These are kind of interrelated. The cue that I was taught when I was a kid was big belly, big belly, right? Lead with the hip, knees and toes, stance and feet. We're still down here. What about up here? Pinch your shoulder blades, right? So pinch your shoulder blades, or we used to say big back, upper back, tight upper back, right? Pinch your shoulder blades is a great one. I'm gonna say tighten the upper back. We got two more that I'd like to get up here. I tweaked my knee trying to show you guys stuff. Two more that I'd like to go over. And they're up here.
Chin up.
So chin up that's one that I'm not gonna personally get into. I like to squat with my chin kind of pulled back and tucked. I'll explain again why I'm getting into that a little later. Was also taught look up, right? And then just generally the thought process behind that, guys, is the body goes where the head goes, right? So if my head's looking up, I'm essentially at least pushing myself in position to go up. We were taught if you're looking down, then you're gonna tip down. But you'll see a lot of great squatters now that still kind of look down. So we'll go over the head and chin position after we hit these other two.
Press your shoulder blades, retract them.
So Drew's getting a little bit more technical, depress and retract, but we're gonna call that tighten the upper back still. So I have two more that I'm thinking about, guys.
Deep breath.
Deep breath?
Deep breath.
So that's belly, right? The two that I'm thinking about are my hands, right? And then my elbows, right? So when I stack up in position, ultimately, depending on your shoulder health, you would like to have the closest grip that you can get on the bar. Some of us can't get in very tight, and that's okay. You're gonna open up that stance a little bit. But again, your grip should be as close as possible within your shoulder health / mobility. Does that make sense to everybody, guys? So grip, right? We're gonna go with grip, and then there's one in between there, and that's the elbows. Grip and elbows. So generally want the elbows as under the bar as we can get them, slightly flared back a little bit, right? But I don't want to see them like this, right? I also don't want them so chicken wing that they're actually preventing me to get into a good tight position, right? So the further I go into this position, I externally rotate, I'm losing that retraction, depression, and compression, right? Inside my upper back. So going over these are like the pretty general cues that we're going over, guys. And like I said, we can change core with belly and air and all types, and we're gonna go into that a little bit more. Grip your elbows, tighten your upper back, stack your spine, keep your core engaged, lead with your hip. Your knees should stay with your toes, and I'll go over that in a second. Your stance, which we'll go over that later, and then your feet, right? So these are our fundamental cues, and this is before we get into bracing, right? Which bracing is gonna kind of cover all of these middle cues, right? So when I say core, I basically mean from my ear to my glutes. Everything in there is considered my core. So that means lats, that means obliques, that means all the interior abdominal muscles that you guys don't see because they're not cool and sexy, right? But they're all helping us squat. Does anybody have any questions or any cues they might have heard that aren't on the board?
It might cover the elbows
Sure.
and the tighten the upper back, but I know you guys say a lot like hold the bar down
Right.
while you're squatting.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the same.
Anybody else? Okay, Nick?
I'd like to hear what some of the high school coaches teach.
Yeah. What are cues that you guys hear in the weight room?
Coaches.
I mean, feet a little bit like outside, shoulder width apart.
Sure.
Keep your feet as flat as possible.
Okay.
That's pretty much it, honestly.
So when you're squatting, you're getting ready to hit a PR, you don't hear your coach screaming nothing?
Core, obviously. That's
Yeah.
one of the most important ones. Keep your core tight. And like if you're using a belt, push out.
Ooh, very good. I like that. Good job. All right, we'll go over belts a little later. push out on the belt. Good cue, very good. Friends, anything? We're all ready? All right.
Hands into the bar.
Well, yeah.
Screw your hands into
Screw your hands into the bar. Sure. So let's start. Let's go on the grip, right? So I'll see it all the time. I'll see somebody who'll have like their like thumbs doing this thing and they're just kind of like floating the bar. And they're not holding it at all. It's just kind of sitting on their neck. Generally, it's way too high for my comfortability. It's like sitting on their neck or spine and they're holding the bar and they're trying to do like this finger floaty thing. And I'll see like literally you'll see their fingers wiggling. It's very hard to keep a tight upper back if you're not squeezing something. So I want you to squeeze the bar. That's generally the first thing, is you guys have to learn how to squeeze that bar, right? So if you're squeezing the bar, we're gonna go into tightening that upper back in a second, but the first thing I want is the neuroreceptors in my hand tight, super, super tight. I mean like white knuckling the bar. How you squeeze the bar, you guys can get into. There's tons and tons of methods. You'll see some guys do like the 3-finger, the 2-finger claw kind of thing going on. I would personally like to see as much of my fingers on the bar so I can get those neuroreceptors again from that palm to start sending those signals. I don't want to see so much of like a broken wrist. Does that make sense, guys? I would like, optimally, a stacked wrist position. Going over tightening that upper back without getting too tight, we're just going to start with the bar position. So that's going to help with our elbow, tightening the back and grip, right? So again, I want my grip as tight as I can get it within my shoulder mobility / elbow health, right? All of that's going to kind of play in that position. I'm squeezing the bar with my hands, and then some thought processes, right? Some people say bend the bar over your back, right? That's a cue that I was taught, like pull the bar all the way down across my back. If you guys are old enough and you remember like Lou Ferrigno and the Incredible Hulk used to like bend wrought iron across his neck, that was like the thought process in my head. As I got a little bit older, another one came up. Trying to remember the coach that I got it from. Elite FTS writer, thinker, Smith. I'm missing his first name. But he worked for Chad Wesley Smith in California, and his cue was rip the bar. So if you were to imagine that the bar was like almost like a set of nunchucks, right? You're trying to rip the bar apart. So I'm trying to pull the bar out to tighten my upper back. You guys have to play around mentally with what works best for you. I like to pull the bar into me, but there are guys that, again, like to pull it away from them and kind of open up that position. Regardless of what you're thinking, the end goal is the same. I need to have my upper back as tight as I can, because that's where the load is going to sit. That's where the load needs to be transferred, dispersed throughout my spine. So when I say upper back as tight as possible, like Drew kind of went over, I need my shoulder blades pinched, which is retracted. That's a good job, Danica. But I also need them depressed, right? And that's one that we kind of missed. I don't want to shrug up into the bar like this. Doesn't look like it's a very good position. I need them pulled down and back. So like I like to say is take my shoulder blades and put them in my back pockets, right? So I'm pinching them together as tight as I can, and I'm sinking them as tight as I can down into my back pockets. That's gonna tighten that upper back position. Again, I'm still pulling the bar. I'm squeezing the bar, and regardless if I'm a high bar or low bar, which we'll go over in another section, regardless of high bar or low bar, I need that upper back as tight as I can. Questions so far, guys? All right, now we're gonna get into stack the spine. So, arching your back is fine. It's an old school cue. Generally, if someone's, and Drew, you can speak on this also. Generally, if someone's gonna blow out a spine and herniate a disc, it's gonna be forward. I'm sorry, vice versa. It's gonna be backwards, right? By me, my spine going forward, I'm sorry, right? So generally, we're not gonna pop a disc out, herniated, in the forward direction. Because of the way we're stacked here, we just don't have enough range to get them to open up to push a disc. That being said, most people don't have enough strength to maintain this exaggerated position all the way through their squat. So what happens is they get to the bottom of their squat from arching too much, and then they lose position and the butt starts coming underneath them, right? I'm trying my best to exaggerate this so you guys can see, but we call that the like butt wink, right? Or we're losing lordosis of the spine, right? That arched position. So that was an older cue, was just basically drive your chest as high as you can, stick your butt back as far as you can, right? The spine's pretty strong in that position because like I said, you're not gonna push something out, pop it forward. Generally when we herniate a disc, it's because of we're in a forward position and we pop one out the back. Yes? Yeah. So, not saying that it's the optimal position for my spine, but it's the way that most old school squatters used to think. As we start getting a little bit further and we got guys that are 198 pounds squatting 600 plus, we started realizing there's a better way to stack that spine and brace that core. So if I'm gonna turn my back to you guys just for a second so I can draw. If I draw a spine, right, I'm gonna kind of give it that shape. Are we all in agreement? Spine, right? This would be my head, kind of, well actually my head would more be like here, but regardless, right? This would be my butt. I would be facing this way, right? So this is my spine position. It's super strong in this very, very position. The way it is, that natural quote unquote S curve, it's very, very strong. When I start unlocking these Jenga blocks and they kind of look like they're kind of stacked like this, right guys? Up and down. If I hyperextend or I curl a little bit, then what happens to them is they start to pinch together and look like that. Can everybody see that kind of? So then I have all of this torque driving me this way, right? Can everybody see what's going on with the discs compressing back there, right? And then I have a load of 400 or 500 pounds pressing down. So now I have a shearing force, right? So these discs, they want to shoot out both ways. So I have a compression force and a shearing force. Generally, when we do the cumulative sum of loads, this is a physics term, right? If I have a load in one direction and a load in the other direction, and then we basically do this crisscross pattern. So my load plus my shearing force, cumulative, and then we have lower back pain. Bingo bambo, right? Right there. Straight through it. So what we're gonna learn to do is stack the spine. We're gonna do some bracing and breathing techniques. I'm gonna finish these cues, and then we're gonna get into bracing. So does everyone understand that I'm skipping bracing, which is gonna cover stack the spine and the core until we come back through these cues, just because I want everyone to do this together. Catching? Sweet. Guys, lead with the hip. So when we say lead with the hip, again, I wanna unlock my hip and hinge to start the squat. That does not mean stick my butt out, okay? So, sorry ladies, but generally it's ladies that have this one. But when I say stick my butt out, the first thing they do is like this, right? And you end up in this like duck butt position with my butt all the way out. And then again, I'm compressing discs with a load on them, and I'm like, I have lower back pain every time I squat. We don't want to kick the butt out. We want to drive it back. So as my spine moves as a team, one big unit, I drive the hip back. I lead with the hips. I hinge into my squat. The amount of hinge is going to be very dependent on your body. We all have different levers, right? So we all have different torso lengths. Specifically, your torso length to limb, femur, that knee length is what's going to dictate what your squat looks like. Does that make sense? So if you have a long torso and you have long legs, you're probably going to have a relatively upright squat. If you have a long torso and short legs, you're probably going to kick your hips back a little bit further, right? If you have a moderate or average or short torso and long legs, then you're definitely going to look like you pancake every time you squat. And there's nothing you can do about it, just how your anatomy is put together. So how much we hinge, not super factor. That's going to be depending on your body type. And when we go into back squats, I'll show you guys that bar path and how we can dictate which is better for you as we're assessing our squat. But lead with the hips. And again, we're gonna go over bracing techniques, and that how's gonna make much more sense when I say stack the spine and the spine stays as one unit and team as I initiate that squat, not drive my butt back and keep my chest here and exaggerate the spinal position. Does that make sense, guys? So again, lead with the hips, not stick your butt out. We're going to go over knees. So, guys, when I say my knees with my toes, right? We're going to hear this like, your knees should never go too far forward, but we just went over that. That's not very fair for the people that have gigantically long legs and they're also very long torso. Their knee has to go somewhere in the squat, so it's going to go forward, right? And that's inevitable. How much forward? It's very much anatomical. If you're in a position and it looks like it's 10 inches forward, we better be in some lifters or some sort of position that's making this exaggerated position, right? But not only do I say knees in line with my toes or knees over the toes or with the toes, that also refers to, again, in and out of this knee. So as a general guideline, as wide as my shoe is where my knee should be, right? So it can go forward. It depends on what type of squat we're doing, right? Especially if it's not a loaded squat. So like if it's an air squat or if it's me hanging out here, right? Is my knee in a dangerous position? No. It's really far forward of my toes though. But I'm not loaded, right? Also, this capsule is closed. This is a very strong position for my femur, tib, fib, and my knee. If I'm up here and my knee goes in, I'm in a very, very dangerous position, right? So this is for all of my athletes, when you guys are hitting a pivot, right? We generally blow or tear an LCL or ACL or MCL. We generally blow one of those by doing this, right? It's usually here. Notice the knee's up high, the hips are high, right? As opposed to like, we don't usually have knee injuries down here because of the way this capsule is. There's no room for their injury to happen. But up here, there's all this room for that injury to happen, right? So again, as a general guideline, wherever my shoe is a safe spot for my knee. Does that make sense, guys? So if you're looking down and your knee's in line with your shoe and it's pretty much in between your toe and heel, you're probably in a good spot. It's okay, your knee's safe there, right? When it starts drifting in, bad, right? Again, here, not necessarily bad. Like if you're running, you're probably gonna end up in this position at some point in time, right? But as long as it's in line and over, we're gonna be okay. So do you understand why I'm saying with knees with toes, not necessarily knees in line or over or not necessarily not over? There's a whole pocket, right? And if you're in your safe spot, that's what we're looking for. Feet, this is a big one. A lot of my guys, I coach them and we coach barefoot. We squat barefoot. It's a lot easier for me as a coach to see things when they're not wearing Air Maxes or shocks or something weird and their foot's doing this thing inside there. And I can't see it because the bubble is taking up all the absorption. I can't see what's going on. Barefoot, wrestling shoes, all types of things like that. Great squatting shoes. I'm earthed, I'm grounded. Like I have full contact with the ground. So I can make more power transfers. And then B, like I said, as a coach, I can see the weight shift on the foot way better. So when we're squatting, where do we want the weight on our feet? We went over that the weight on our heels is a cue, and it's not necessarily where I want it. So where do I want the weight on my foot?
Midfoot.
What is it? The ball. So let's draw a little footsies, right? So you're saying we want to go here? Ish? What do you got?
Midfoot.
Midfoot. So the weight should be here. Is that what you're saying? What do we got, guys?
Split it.
Split it. So we're getting it. So split the midfoot in the.
Split heel in front of the foot. Like.
Isn't that midfoot?
Yes, but on the back on that one.
All right. How about I get back to you? So guys, when we're thinking about our foot, I want you guys to think about a tripod. So there's where the weight should be on my foot. It's very difficult in some like fancy Nikes or even fancy Jordans to get into this position and get that type of contact to the floor. because of A, the Jordan's gonna have a high arch, or it's gonna elevate my heel, or it's gonna try and roll me in position, right? So when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about trying to put weight outside my foot. I'm trying to put the ball of my foot down and the heel of my foot down. And then for me, I like to think about gripping the floor, right? So most of us, we wear shoes too much and we don't have great foot articulation, but we are humans and you should be able to move each of your toes individually. You guys are all trying to wiggle your toes in your shoe right now and you're like, damn it, I can't do it, right? We should be able to. It takes a lot of practice. You should be able to take all of your fingers, phalanges, all of your toe pieces, and squeeze the floor like you're actually grabbing the floor. And you'll watch big squatters, when they do that anchor position, that's what they're doing, is they're squeezing their toes in their shoes because their federation doesn't let them squat barefoot. So they're just trying to find the right grip on the floor. Just like when you guys go to bench, right? You squeeze your hands, you move them 1 inch, 2 inches, you keep playing with your grip, because that's where the load's gonna have to be dispersed, right? When you guys set up on the ground, this is the earth. This is where we need to have the tightest position. So again, that tripod. Another thing that you guys can think of is thinking about like a snowshoe, right? So a snowshoe is wide and flat so that it disperses all the weight out amongst my foot, right? So I don't want all my weight on my heel. I don't want it on my toe. I also need to learn to roll some of that weight out to the side. What that's gonna do is it's gonna force your foot to arch a little bit. Even if you are flat-footed, it's gonna force your foot to arch and create a nice strong position for you to squat from. Other than stacking and bracing, does anybody have questions on these cues? So when I say this cue, you should understand what I'm saying. We all got it. We're getting that to bracing. Thank you though, Drew.
The foot, the outside. I know you just said it gives you the arch, but what is that arch? I guess you said you want your foot to be flat, but you said you want the arch. What is the...
Sure. Have you ever drove across a flat 700-foot bridge?
No.
No, they're all arches, aren't they?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that arch is strong. We want to be able to have that arch because that's the way our foot was designed. But I mean, it's a strong position. It helps disperse the weight across my foot.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah. I want those bones in my foot stacked in the right position. And anatomically, that arch is the right position.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. So again, guys, as you guys go to the bar, before you even take your first step out, you guys should have went through all these cues. Some of us can go through them a lot faster, some of us not so fast, and that's okay. And you should have like your own little mantra when you guys get up to the bar of like tight back, chest up, hips back, feet flat, knees out, right? And you should be like going through them in your head. It doesn't matter if they're these exact words. Just, we need to have all these cues. These are the fundamentals. This is what makes big squatters. The next thing we're gonna go over is what differentiates a good squatter and a great squatter. We're gonna go over bracing and breathing. I know breathing sounds very, very simple, but athletes breathe different than average people breathe, at least subconsciously. So we've gone over all the cues, the fundamental cues of squatting. Does anybody have any questions on those before I get into this bracing and spinal stacking? Sweet. So again, guys, we're going over this vertebrae here, right? When they're sitting on top of each other, these nice oblong Zen-like stones sitting in their nice statue, they're super, super strong. You can put tons and tons of weight on them. This is what allows guys that are sub 200 to squat over 600. What allows Jess at 123 pounds to squat 500 plus pounds, right, is the ability to stack the spine. Because once one of these Jenga pieces falls out of place, that spine's gonna start collapsing all the way through. And I'll show you guys when we stack the spine, you'll see generally when we fail a squat, it's in this brace. We lost a brace, right? There's some other reasons to fail a squat. What would be some other reasons that we fail a squat? There's generally 3 as a coach we accept.
Knees in.
So that would be a breakdown, right? Of like either A, physical. So that's one of the reasons that I would say is you're physically unable to or just not strong enough yet to perform the task. That's one. Technical, which means you're definitely strong enough and you made a mistake, right? And the mistake can be very, very simple. Like I said, it can be one teeny tiny thing off of like, You know what? When I kicked my hips back, I unlocked a teeny tiny bit and I lost it. And at the high level, 600 pounds, 700, 800 pounds, one mistake and they're just like, I missed it. The last one could be mental. PRs are heavy. Like they start shaking, your body starts shaking, at that point you're like, is this really it? Do I got it? Is it in the tank? And that unlocking and getting into the hole, it can be scary. And that scary could prevent you from staying inside of your quote unquote groove. So we generally fail one of three reasons: mental, physical, technical, right? So we're gonna try to physical and technical fix that hip to ear position, right? I'm just gonna bracing and breathing. First thing we're gonna go over is breathing. So we have a video. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out. It's on YouTube on diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing. I'm gonna show you guys some techniques today to learn belly breathing. And then I'm gonna show you another one called crocodile breathing that we're gonna throw on top of that, all right? Yeah? I need a little bit of space on the floor so that you guys can lay down. So just grab a little bit of space. We're not gonna get right into it right now, but just grab some space. All right, guys, so when we're breathing, we are thinking about breathing with our diaphragm. Does everyone know what the diaphragm is? What's up? Hiccups, yeah. Stomach. So it's kind of stomach. It's like right over-ish stomach, right?
It helps compress and decompress the lungs, right?
So it pulls down and up, right? So generally when we think about breathing as regular humans, and it's okay, we think about open chest, closed chest. Open chest, closed chest, right? And that's generally how we think about breathing. Whoa. That's how she thinks. She's ready. She is ready to breathe. So guys, open chest, closed chest, right? But let's say that I have 700 pounds on my spine and I try and do this. Watch what happens with my chest. So you saw like my chest rise, what, an inch, inch and a half, 2? My lungs are meant to breathe. They're meant to expand and contract. They are definitely not lifting muscles. So that being said, I'm probably not gonna get a full breath of air because if I try to lead with my chest, right? And what's gonna happen is that 700 pounds is gonna compress it, therefore limiting my O2 max, therefore limiting how much oxygen can get to my muscles, in turn, probably gonna make me fail to lift. Can we see what's going on there, right? How important just one single breath can be. So what we're gonna try and practice, we're gonna practice it right now, and then we're gonna get into one step to show you guys, it's diaphragmatic breathing. So I'm using my diaphragm to draw my rib cage down. So we are humans, we have these nostrils for a reason, so we'd like you to breathe in your nose, okay? I'm gonna take a big deep breath in my nose, and I'm gonna draw my belly out. I'm thinking about filling my belly like a pitcher of water with air from the bottom up. Notice that there's very minimal chest movement when I breathe like this, so I'll put my hand on my belly, my hand on my chest so you guys can see. And you'll notice that this hand very minusculely moved, and my chest definitely didn't go up and down, right? I'm filling my diaphragm, and I can fill my lungs that way by pulling them down and using the diaphragm to open up those lungs as best I can. Therefore, having a full set of lungs, full set of oxygen, right? Also giving me a nice big cushion to help push out against the belt, right? So even if you're not using a belt, guys, when we go over bracing, which we're gonna get into in a minute, we're gonna get to breathing first. When we go over bracing, you still push out all the way across as if you were wearing an imaginary belt, right? So I'd like you guys to take your hand on your chest and your hand on your belly. If sitting up is too hard, lay down on your backs, right? So it's hard, it's gonna take time, and if you've never practiced it, you're not gonna have fun because you're gonna be like, I can't get it, my chest keeps moving. Slow in your nose and fill your belly, then take a deep brace, then let that air out your nose. Again, try your best to use your nose, that's what we have it there for, and go over some diaphragmatic belly breathing. Let's try 5 deep breaths, guys. Everybody's got a
I got a question.
Sure.
When you talk about the pushing out, why is that more, why is that stronger than when you like tighten your abs and suck your abs in?
So what you're thinking about is Valsalva, right? When I go, right? Like,
Early Arnie.
Courtney, can I borrow you? Can you face our friends? Can you show them a Valsalva with your belly? So pull your belly in as tight as you can. All the way, tight, 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 tight. And you guys can see that Courtney's like pulled everything in. She's drawing up as high as she can, and she's like this tiny, right? Yeah. And her abs are definitely working, but it's not, chest heavy, it's difficult. It's hard to hold. Relax. So as I pull up and draw, Frank Zane, if anybody is in the bodybuilding and older guys, right? I'm showing my age a little bit, huh? Frank Zane was the best vacuum pose ever. So the guy was very, very big. These are like 230 pounds, 6'3", 6'4" guys. And he would hit a vacuum pose and he would do it all the time because the other guys couldn't do it at the time, right? And he would take his big burly waist and he'd pull it into like 8 inches. Like it would look like he would disappear, just be just abs and his spine because he could pull everything all the way in tight. That is a contraction of the abs. That is definitely a very, very tough abdominal exercise, but it's not strong because if we're pulling everything up and in, I'm gonna show you a stronger position in a second when we go over bracing. We're still breathing a little bit, right? So we're gonna start adding some bracing techniques. You can sit down, thank you very much. I was just trying to pick the leanest person that I could show as much. You're not gonna see when I vacuum, there's no vacuum, guys. That's it, that's all we got, all right? And I'm gonna borrow you. So the next one we're gonna do, guys, is you're gonna take your thumb, Angie's gonna take her thumb, you guys are gonna put it in your belly, Angie's gonna put it in my belly. But what she's gonna do is she's gonna take her thumb, she's gonna jab it in here. I'm gonna relax as best as I can. She's gonna jab it in here as hard as she can. Harder, like real hard. Like try and, yeah, stay right there, right? Right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna breathe in my belly, and you can feel it start to expand, right? And then I'm gonna brace my core. And you can feel that big giant jolt, right? So what you guys are gonna do is you're gonna find your oblique, it's this chunk that hangs over right here. You're gonna take your thumb and put it in there. Now you're gonna belly breathe, and as you take that big deep breath and you get to your pinnacle, you're gonna brace your core, and I would like you to feel your thumb jolt away from your body. Ultimately, going over bracing techniques, again, Ken, you should be thinking about if there was a belt, an imaginary belt, or an inflatable tire around my spine, I'm filling every single muscle with air as possible. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. All right, now everybody roll onto your belly. Yeah, thank you very much. Now we're gonna practice belly breathing with a thumb in our oblique. When you guys get your belly full, you're gonna brace your core as hard as you can, okay? Fill all those muscles. I might come around and poke you, but you should be completely 360 degrees tight. Let's do about 5 breaths. Again, fill your diaphragm, fill your lungs, then brace your core. Does everyone really kind of understand what's going on? Do we feel the difference in bracing my core and a Valsalva maneuver? Yeah. Yay? You guys can sit back up, or you can hang out down there, either way. It's all good. Drew, can I borrow you? And a bar, please. So again, guys, the reason that we don't use those cues of like arch your back and chest up is because of spinal stacking, right? I want the spine stacked. So now we're going to incorporate breathing, belly bracing, and then tightening the slack out of my spine, right? So Drew's going to put the bar, just put it on your back for me, buddy. Awesome, and you can face that way, please. And we're just gonna go over the first one. So I stole Drew, he's not warm, so he's definitely not ready to squat. He's also probably not ready to be tight under a bar. We're just gonna use him as an example to brace in those techniques, right? So as Drew starts to initiate these positions, he's already thinking about all of these, right? We're not gonna go over those. I'm not gonna make him initiate a squat. I just wanna show some bracing techniques. So again, we went over all these belly muscles, right? But what other muscle is very gigantic, like the second biggest one in our body, and is around our spine? Lats, guys, right. So when Drew tightens his upper back, which I'm telling you right now, Drew's upper back is tight. It's very, very tight. He's gonna fill his belly with his first deep breath, right? And then he's gonna flex and flare these lats to tighten the rest of his spine, right? So I'm pulling the bar into position, and there's Drew's old chunk of meat to help encase the spine, right? Does everyone understand what I'm saying? Those lats are important in the spine. They're gonna stabilize us as best as we can. So we got a tight upper back. We're contracting and flaring these lats. I'm filling my belly, right? Notice, Drew, can you turn 90 degrees for me? That's a quarter turn. Thanks. Notice Drew's spine is very, very neutral, right? Can you do me a favor and stick your butt back? No, I didn't say squat, just your butt back. Chest up, exaggerate that position. Right, see, this doesn't look like a neutral spine, does it, guys? It's not. Look at this position right here. So see how Drew's belly is open and his rib cage is exposed? If I were to slap him in the belly, he would collapse and cave, right? So the next cue that we're gonna teach you guys is rib cage down, right? So notice now Drew's rib cage is, instead of here, he drives it and rocks it down, okay? Another thing that some coaches like to say is Coke can core. If you guys take a Coke can, even if it's empty and there's no soda in there, right? Or a Pepsi can, right? And I stand on top of it, it'll hold me. Even my big giant ass, it'll hold me. But if you go like this and flick the side of it, it's gonna crush. But the Coke can, in its very state, is very, very strong. Your ribs in this state, including your core, obliques, your lat, in this very, very position, is extremely strong. When Drew initiates his squat, see how it all moves together as a team, right? So from his ear to his quote unquote butt, he is not unlocking it all. This is super important when it comes to squatting. Thank you, Drew. This is the only way that you'll be able to get very, very heavy loads on your body. Yes, thank you. Guys, we went over a lot of cues, a lot of coaching techniques, a lot of words, some technical jargon, some anatomy. Does anybody have any questions now that we've gone over breathing, bracing on any of these cues? So next week when I yell one of these across the room, everybody's gonna fix it, and I'm not gonna have to say anybody's name, right?
What's that plus what's?
All right, guys, so we've gone over grip, we've gone over elbow, we've gone over tighten the upper back, stack the spine, engage the core, lead with the hip or hinge the hip, knees stay with the toes and inside the toe box. The only thing that we really didn't get over too much is house stance width. That's gonna be very individual and body type, right? And then we've gone over your foot. Again, why is it important that we learn to brace that core and stack that spine?
It's the strongest position.
Right, so we can get as much weight on it as possible. And what were the things that you guys said we were gonna do for squatting, right? Is increase athletic performance. Athletic performance is very, very specific. It's a really easy formula, right? Power to weight ratio, right? That's how drag cars win. That's how athletes win. That's how it is, right? You have two wrestlers the same weight. The stronger one, if they both have the same exact skill, the stronger one wins, right? You have one linebacker who's 250 pounds and has a 700-pound bench, and the other guy who's 250 pounds and has a 250-pound bench. What's gonna happen when they collide chest to chest? Big guy's gonna win, right? Even if they're the same weight. Power to weight ratio, right? So that's another one. Guess what? Generally, the more you put on your quads, glutes, and hams, the more weight, the bigger they get. So for hypertrophy, again, we still wanna learn to stack the spine, right? For general health, Drew, if I stack the spine like that, is there any way, shape, or form that I'm gonna probably injure myself? Right, so now we went over general health, right? Anytime you go to pick up something heavy, think about those cues, especially these ones from like right here to right here. Again, in closing, guys, a squat by definition is what? Sitting down, right? Maximum knee, minimal hip, right? Do you guys have any questions for me? So I know a lot of this was bracing and breathing. I know we've done a video on that before. The cues, these are super important. If you guys haven't thought about them, try and start thinking about them next time you're under a bar. Next Wednesday, we're gonna go over different types of squats, right? We're gonna go over different scales and variations. We're gonna go over different high bar, low bar, and body type positions for those. And we will all be under a bar. Questions? All right, hopefully I see you guys all next week, and we're gonna do some squatting. If you guys are here for the entire month, we're gonna hit some PRs. I'm gonna go over programming. I'm gonna go over leading up to a PR. I'm gonna go over leading up to a maximal load. Again, different types of squats for different types of purposes, scales for those squats, all types of things. If that's it, that's all I got, guys. Thank you very much.